This movie proves that Marvel can still cook. They just need to stop using 27 chefs at once.
Kirby, how's that sauce coming?
Yeah, I'll be the judge of that.
I was supposed to make this right when the movie dropped, but having a newborn can change things. So, here we are. How many months later? Well, I almost filmed it 4 months later, which was kind of perfect. I even went so far as to calculate the minutes from the movie's release date, just to find the number 4 somewhere. But, of course, the holidays and more came up, so honestly, what better way to start off the new year than by finishing goals from the previous one? You could even say the year before.
Say that again?
As I was saying, Marvel finally rebooted the Fantastic Four in a way that actually proves the MCU can still cook, despite recent fan debate. They just have too many chefs in the kitchen. And this movie, it was almost everything we needed from a reboot, as well as almost the perfect movie Marvel needed to get everyone hyped again, especially headed into Avengers Doomsday. After technically 4 attempts, how fitting, and another 10-year wait between the 2005 film and the 2015 film we can all forget about.
Say that again?
In 2025, someone behind the scenes finally remembered that the Fantastic Four aren't just superheroes. They're a family. Okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, First Steps is not perfect. We're going to talk about that. As someone who watches almost all YouTube videos in double speed, the edit feels fast. Not to mention, Reed gets the least love power-wise, and the big post-credit scene feels like someone said, oh yeah, Doomsday is like one movie away. 15 minutes before they sent out the copies. But this movie has something Marvel's been missing for a while now, mainly in their multiverse slate of films. A heartbeat. A vibe to it. A world that actually feels lived in. Right from the opening montage, which is honestly one of the best ways to retread the origins without boring us, you can feel that this movie has its priorities straight. And above all, characters who feel like people first, superheroes second. The best part of this movie, hands down, is how instantly believable the family dynamic is through the time spent with them. Ben and Johnny feel like brothers, not rivals doing a comedy bit. As fun as that was in the early 2000s film, which will always hold a special place in my heart, their insults actually feel warm. Like, I'm trying to rage bait you, but because I love you.
Play 'em off.
Sue and Reed finally feel like a real couple. Not two co-workers forced to flirt for the camera, and not a story about them coming together for the first time again. They support each other, they challenge each other, and the baby doesn't feel like a surprise twist, it feels like a natural extension of their relationship, and where their lives would go with such a family-oriented lifestyle. And as a parent of 2 myself, don't call me Unc, I'm still in my early 20s, and with our rainbow baby arriving throughout my viewings of this film, the family angle hit way harder than I would have expected. I mean, that car seat moment towards the end, maybe it came off cheesy to some, but if you're a parent, you already know just how real it is. I think we can all agree that even the side characters like Mole Man stole every scene they were in, making them feel worthy of the screen time. Bringing in a reformed villain to imply past adventures was such an efficient way to sell history that we didn't fully see. Herbie was another surprise addition that made the family feel complete. I'm glad Marvel didn't treat these side characters simply as throwaway comic relief. Herbie isn't just beefing around for toy sales or used quite like a baby Groot the whole time. He plays into the emotional warmth of the team. As for Mole Man, the dude unintentionally stole the movie for me, and I know for others. These aren't background decorations. They're personality anchors that make this world lively. A lot of films forget that supporting characters matter just as much as the leads, and this one didn't. We won't address Rachel Brosnahan, though. I, too, like many, was skeptical about some of the casting choices. We all had our fan cast phases and were photoshopping actors into blue suits before the AI wave fully took over. But by the 30-minute mark, I wasn't thinking about any of that anymore. It's not just good casting, it's committed casting. It almost feels like every actor sat down and were like, okay, what part of this family am I responsible for grounding? And they brought that energy into every scene, even the smaller ones. I think I really only rooted for Vanessa Kirby specifically throughout the casting process on looks alone, and just kind of had my fingers crossed for the rest. I would have been interested in seeing someone like Tom Ellis take up the mantle of Mr. Fantastic, but I was pleasantly surprised by Pedro Pascal and the rest of the crew. The world building itself around these characters is honestly one of the coolest things Marvel's done in years. The fresh retro-futuristic aesthetic, the color palette, the miniatures, the sci-fi tech that actually feels kind of sci-fi-y. It all just feels imaginative, like a comic book. Seeing these heroes cherished and so heavily involved with the public especially, was another unexpected surprise. Small shout out to the new Marvel Studios card too. It's small, I know, but that stuff genuinely helps set the tone. I personally wish DC updated theirs per project too, but I do get that it's kind of like burning money for just a few seconds to them, so it makes sense. But it's not all just pretty to look at either. The aesthetic actually fits the Fantastic Four. Their whole identity has always been this weird mix of science pulp adventure and heartfelt family story. So making the world feel like a retro space-age utopia come to life just works. It gives everything this charm that feels different from some of the worlds that we've seen. The 838 Earth that we got a glimpse at in Doctor Strange 2 was similar, but we didn't really get to take it all in like this time around. At a time where we've had upwards of 5 theatrical releases of comic book movies in the same calendar year, plus a number of tie-in shows, it can be hard to stand out. Not only that, but having such a unique tone of despair and real stakes for a modern-day Marvel film is an achievement in itself. Part of Marvel's charm is how connected everyone can be in New York, but you can't deny how nice it is to see a reimagining of that same setting with some really good civilian costume work, I should add. And don't even get me started on the parts of the film that take place off-world. The interstellar influence is definitely there. Not in a copycat way, but in the way the film treats the unknown. Grounded, but still almost dreamlike with the lengths they go. And my god, that score. I am floating every time those angels sing. I'm also a huge fan of the suit designs. I know fans were pretty mixed, some preferring black accents or a different material altogether, but I thought it only added to the freshness of the film. Something that's not spandex or a traditional over-designed on-screen adaptation. I'm more of a darker blue kind of guy when it comes to seeing suits on the big screen, but I can't ignore just how well the lighter tone they chose popped against their environments, and added to the retro/comic accurate vibe. The subtle differences among the team and their white accents were a really nice touch too. I mean, they even managed to add the comic lines when Johnny flames on. Like, how did they do that? Bit of a shame we didn't get to see more of their classic costumes from the montage, but I wasn't disappointed in the slightest with the modern versions. Plus, they weren't covered in CGI that takes you out of the immersion, I can safely say my balls were pleased. My eyeballs. Powers look great too. Sue gets some of her best moments ever visually and emotionally, with a wonderful motherly aspect mixed in, especially in the finale. They even found new ways to show them off, like seeing the baby in the womb early. Which, how awesome would that be in real life? We had to travel 45 minutes anytime we wanted an ultrasound that took 15 minutes. The way the light bends when she uses them, though, was truly sick, and far better than the light blue warbles of previous iterations. They really nailed the balance between her character being nurturing without making her feel sidelined. She's actually the backbone of the entire crew. She's the one who connects everyone and grounds this entire story, even when the world around her is collapsing. Literally. It didn't feel forced either, especially because I can't imagine out of the 3 guys who all have their own chaotic traits, they'd need someone to bring them back down to Earth. The birth scene specifically hit way harder after going through one myself again. They handled the fear, the urgency, the protective instincts surprisingly realistically, even if it was in space. Johnny is easily the best version we've seen, with real depth and smarts that prove why he's on the team in the first place. His side story can feel like they were giving him something to do, but thankfully it was still handled well, and he even came out as the surprise MVP ready to sacrifice himself twice. He's more than just the ladies' man, which he still is, but it's not what his role revolves around. I never really thought about it too much before, but I liked how his abilities were shown as more of a dial that he can intensify and control, as opposed to fully flaming on. It somehow never occurred to me just how much control he has over them until these scenes, because I guess I'm just used to seeing him get hotter, not really like simmer and use his abilities so practically. As far as I can remember, every other version just flamed on until they got too hot, really. But I could be wrong. Ben feels more human, ironically, than he ever has, with a less gravelly voice and more unique character traits being shown as he cooks and interacts with the public. Despite many of his scenes feeling cut and the remaining ones almost like seeds planted for future movies, hopefully. But the little thuds when he walks or claps are so good. The sound team really made him feel heavy in the world. I wasn't sure how I felt about the comic-y eyebrows originally, but they were such a perfect decision, especially with helping him differ from previous iterations. Hell, even the beard went hard. And speaking of, my fiance asked how his, stuff works post-transformation. We may or may not have spiraled into analyzing rock texture anatomy before she asked how he gets a boulder. And I am not emotionally recovered. But what really sells his art is how much he softens without losing the rough edges that make him bend. They somehow made me think he would give the world's best hugs. And that says everything about how soft they made him emotionally. Every time he has those interactions with regular people, cooks, or even just stands around wearing a sweater vest, all show how he's trying to hold on to those last pieces of normalcy and the man he used to be. And thank God he's not naked. Then there's old Reedy Richards. Yeah, Reed's Richard gets the short end of the shaft this time. His powers deserve far more creative uses. I can understand that from a character standpoint, maybe he prefers to rely on his intellect, but even then, the 2000s version still allowed him to use them in multiple scenarios. I know you remember that gross scene of him flattening his hand beneath the door. Bro was even working on a degree in biology. To play devil's advocate, stretching can go uncanny fast, and audiences love to accuse weird looking of being bad CGI. So I get why they paced it out. I mean, we don't need to see him turn into a teapot, but come on. Make him a slingshot or able to reach further than a few cars. The other versions dove so far as to how he could even change his facial structure.
Well, I guess that's what I thought you always wanted. A stronger man.
I mean, would it read like to run tests on himself and literally stretch the boundaries of his abilities? Upon my final rewatch, I did appreciate noticing more smaller scenes of him using them in the lab and so on. Part of me just wishes we saw a few combo moves with them too. Since they're a team. Something like Reed slingshotting Ben into a fight, or vice versa. The team synergy we did get was awesome, so I can't really complain, especially if we get more of these guys down the line. Elongated fingers crossed. Despite these things, most scenes with him in general were handled really well, with a lot shown through Pedro's performance and expressions alone. The emotional weight, the inner turmoil. One look at this man and you'd believe he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, which is exactly what you would expect the smartest man alive to go through. It was nice that he didn't feel like another cocky science bro. He carries his knowledge like a weight, and it shapes how he reacts to everything. I loved that Ben understands how much he punishes himself for the first accident too, yet still chooses to trust him when they go back into space. That's such a small but powerful character beat. Arguably, one of his best personal growth moments was realizing Franklin isn't some science problem, but his baby. That shift in perspective really hit. And watching Reed explain to Sue how he views the world was another top-notch moment. As well as seeing him go down a Tony Stark baby-proofing the world kind of path, which was really interesting and lined right up with what becoming a first-time parent feels like. Not to mention, it could parallel really well with RDJ's debut as Doctor Doom in the future, who may once again have a similar task, just with a new mask. As for the Silver Surfer, easily one of the coolest looking MCU characters we've gotten in a while. I know some people were skeptical about using the female iteration, but honestly, she looks amazing. The reflective textures, the eyes, the voice, the way she actually crushed some gnarly waves. I'm an absolute sucker for slow-mo scenes, so hell yeah. All of it just worked for me. Plus, we're in a multiverse where things are about to implode, so we can still get the Norrin Rad version later on. I do understand the disappointment some, but to be fair, he was used in the earlier films, so I can see the appeal of taking things in a different direction. Plus, I'm just not as harsh since a good chunk of this film's purpose is to show how different their world is from 616. It would be kind of boring if they didn't take risks. My main gripe is that we're absolutely rushing through the rest of the multiverse phase, so we probably won't get to see room for more creative settings and changes again for a while. I appreciated that she didn't totally feel like a plot device. She's not just the shining woman who shows up, warns everyone, and dips. Well, she kinda did that actually, but you know what I mean. You feel like she's torn between duty and empathy, even if her backstory seemed a little brushed over. As for Galactus, man, after so many teases, we were finally given a version that feels huge, terrifying, and beautiful. They absolutely crushed the voice with a deep, bassy, otherworldly tone. Ralph Ineson, Mr. Ralph, absolutely crushed the voice with a deep, bassy, otherworldly tone. He probably scares the shit out of drive-thru workers. His screen time was a little short near the end, or at least it kind of felt that way. Maybe I was just too locked in and didn't want the moment to pass. I suppose it is arguably better than if he overstayed his welcome and we got used to his looming presence. It's just that the finale kind of pulls a Justice League War, which I wasn't the happiest with the first time, because it felt somewhat too easy in a weird way. But upon rewatch and letting things settle in, I felt the emotional toll on the team much more. If nothing else, I'm just thankful we didn't only see a cloud. I wouldn't really have a problem if we learned a little more about where he went, or maybe had a post-credit scene teasing his return, even if it's years down the line. But I do appreciate the love that went into his design. They built a practical suit and had the man stomping around on miniature sets. It doesn't get more dedicated than that. It really makes me regret not trying harder for an IMAX viewing. Visually, it's probably a top tier for the MCU, or near it since everything wasn't chalked up to CGI. But the movie as a whole isn't the absolute best out of... How many movies are in the MCU? Holy shit! As I mentioned, the editing is fast. So much so that I didn't feel the full emotional weight until my second viewing. You can feel where scenes were cut, especially moments with Ben. Honestly, they should have just made it 4 hours, 44 minutes, and 44 seconds. Just commit to the bit. A lot of Ben's emotional beats just seem trimmed though. Probably because previous iterations also touched on his struggles. For a reason. At least nothing drags on, which I'm sure is why they chopped it to pieces because they really needed a win. We do technically jump right from moment to moment with no wasted scenes. As for the baby CGI, or at least where they inserted them into shots after filming in front of a screen, yeah. Weirdly, some of it did look cleaner on my rewatches. Either my eyes relaxed or they pulled a classic last-minute MCU polish. But to be fair, I can't imagine trying to blend a squirming kid with your big CGI rock man. But at least they had a baby and not a 5-year-old in a onesie, so it's fine. Let's move on. Those post-credit scenes? Again, they feel like someone remembered last second. Alright, these are the first steps towards Doomsday. And MCU movies need end tags, because these characters are going to be the backbone of our big Avengers films that we're hoping revive fan hype. Clearly, the delivery just wasn't there for me. They swear up and down that RDJ was actually in the suit on set. But how are we supposed to believe that or care really if we don't get any indication? I know they want to save big reveals for future movies, but the connectivity of this phase already feels strained with the lack of setup and direction. Even if that isn't entirely Marvel's fault given everything that happened with Kang. I personally would have loved to see that continue somehow, especially with ties between Reed's Tech, Nathaniel Richards, and the TVA. But when you look back and remember how early they planted seeds for Thanos, plus we saw his face, voice, everything, even if it was later reworked, it's hard to latch onto the idea that this post-credit scene was some kind of huge revelation. And that's coming from someone who, despite how my first video essay may sound, has relentlessly defended Marvel and given them the benefit of the doubt.
Look at that! Those things are beautiful!
I know it's easier said than done, but I can't imagine being a general audience member and seeing a green cape and shiny mask in the corner and instantly thinking, yep, that's our new Universal Big Bad. I also just have a larger gripe with how post-credits are structured now. The important one comes first, and the silly one after you've waited for 10 minutes. It doesn't feel rewarding anymore. For the most part, everyone who cares stays behind now. So what gives? I mean, even non-superhero movies do it as well. This gripe really took shape after that damn Pizza Papa scene in Multiverse of Madness when I had a bladder full of piss and I've just never been the same since. It felt like I was personally being punched in the face and bladder. I would have felt a lot different if we saw something with Galactus in the second tag, instead of the cartoon shell. Even if it was just Galactus' big back swimming through space, I would have felt at least some excitement and assurance in his return. Alright, let's switch tunes here and talk about the opposite end of everything I just said. What I really appreciated is how standalone this movie is. You don't need homework. You don't need a 10-minute recap. And you don't need to suffer through Secret Invasion and pretend you enjoyed it. It's just a story. One reality, one family, one gigantic struggle. It's kind of funny how this and Superman both drop near each other with similar big sci-fi beats. Black holes, evacuations, established heroes. But tonally, they couldn't be more different. And both benefit from that. Setting this in its own reality made the stakes matter. I mean, how many of us went in fully believing we'd see the world eaten by Galactus and the family fleeing to 616 like the Thunderbolts post-credit scene? You just don't feel that anymore. Especially when 60 other heroes are around and apparently too busy until it's their big bad to fight. It's bittersweet because I wish Marvel used the multiverse to explore more self-contained worlds like this. Give us more cameos of alternate heroes or variants that weren't disposable. As much of a sucker as I am for those scenes, but let filmmakers experiment. Let characters breathe in their own sandbox. Let stories exist on their own terms. This was refreshing, and I honestly didn't know how badly I wanted it. I'll admit, I'll be a little bummed if they become part of the main timeline, because we may not get such a creative world again. During the climax, I knew the revival moment was coming after Sue's sacrifice. I mean, they hyped the baby up too much for it to not happen and be a display of strength for what's probably the most powerful character in the MCU now, but it still got me. Maybe it's because I'm a dad now. Maybe it's because the movie just nails the emotional setup. Maybe both. The main thought I had was, oh wait, we're about to see multiverse shenanigans, so what if we actually lose her for a while and Franklin brings her back, or we see a variant? With a standalone project like this, for now, it actually had me second guessing. Not to mention how everyone's performances still make me fight off tears even after knowing what's coming. The way the sound cuts out at her death alone was such a good decision too, man. I loved it. As a fan, I still really want to know what she saw in those last moments with that cool eye effect. Especially with how she talks about Franklin afterwards, like she understood what he did. I mean, maybe we don't need to know, but I'm curious if she went somewhere like Thanos or Tony in that one deleted scene. Overall, what makes this movie work is that it remembers why the Fantastic Four matter. Not because they're Marvel's first family, historically, but because they're a family in a human sense. You can't have a proper Fantastic Four story if you don't nail the family dynamics. The Incredibles will always be the gold standard, but First Steps did a really decent job. So yeah, First Steps isn't perfect, but it's one of the most heartfelt, imaginative, and visually cool Marvel movies we've gotten in recent years. Guardians 3 is there, but it feels like an outlier in a phase that's supposed to be multiverse heavy, and more so slipped in there due to the firing and rehiring of James Gunn. Fans tired of MCU homework will appreciate this film, until they realize it is that homework now. But I haven't grown tired of that aspect. It's what makes the MCU what it is. Similarly, it was nice to feel like the jokes weren't referential or ashamed of themselves. The humor never feels like it's undercutting the stakes. Nobody breaks tension with a poorly written quip. It's all pretty character driven. Johnny's ego, Ben's heart of stone reactions, Reed's awkward science guyness. It feels like the kind of humor families actually use, and it comes out naturally depending on the scenario you're in. I was so thankful none of them took me out of the scenes, especially with how easily distracted my ass can be. Matt Jackman can clearly handle the parent-specific themes really well too, given WandaVision, which means this movie will definitely hit different for many adults. So all in all, despite being a stretch away from a perfect film, the Fantastic Four feel fantastic again. Yeah, you knew that was coming.
Say that again?
But those are just my thoughts. What did you think of the Fantastic Four First Steps? I'd say it's a win for the genre overall and a sign that we are hopefully headed up from here. Let me know in the comments what you want to see more of, or any points I didn't mention. I'd love to hear it. If you found any part of this video entertaining or useful, maybe hit the thumbs up, maybe subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Took some time getting this first video out and trying to get things dialed in. If you've been subscribed for a while, you've probably noticed some changes with news updates. But the goal is to transition into more long-form video essay content like this one, and mainly post about some of the biggest or most interesting news, just so I can chat with you guys about your thoughts. Which is why I started posting in the first place, just to find like-minded fans. I've recently realized that video essay style content like this may have been the passion I was looking for though. So I hope you guys stick around and help me get better at it as I work on covering all of the MCU movies on the way to Doomsday. Then, if it goes well, we can branch out to DC and who knows what else. Either way, I'm just thankful you guys have interacted with me enough through the years to give me the confidence and motivation to try something new. So thank you. An info dump out of the way. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and that's that. See ya.